I'm going to show you one of the most incredible games played this year. And maybe this is even a game we will talk about it in 5 to 10 years time, maybe even longer, because something absolutely unusual is happening. Some brilliant sacrifices are seen, and not just one sacrifice, guys. You have to watch from beginning till the end. And I promise you that these 15 minutes or so, these are going to be the best 3 minutes of your week. Just watch this video, do it, and also make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you feel like these videos are really good, you enjoy them, just also consider making a small donation to my PayPal account. You can find the link below the video, or give generously. Appreciate all the support, and I really want to share you my thoughts on this true masterpiece. Some incredible things are happening, so I'm not going to let you wait any longer. The players are Vladimir Fedoseev, rated 2702, and Salem, 2629. Super Grandmasters playing in the Sharjah Masters tournament in the United Arab Emirates. Here's the game. Fedoseev goes for 1d4, knight f6, c4, g6, and Fedoseev is playing his pet line. His favorite move is here, h4, setting the board on fire by move 3. And very often, against the King's Indian, there are these ideas to play h5 to challenge the pawn on g6. Sometimes you wait a bit, sometimes you play it immediately. Anyway, for black it's also quite unpleasant which setup to choose for. Well, Salem goes for d6, knight c3, and very often people play here bishop g7, fianchettoing their bishop, but Salem has a different idea. He's postponing the development of his king's bishop, starts with the move knight bd7. So there are ideas to play e5 very quickly, but after the move queen c2, he has a different plan. He now played the move c5, attacking the pawn on d4. White advances the pawn to d5, and here a6. You know these kind of structures. It's arising usually from a King's Indian or a Benoni. In any case, black is trying to strike back on the queen side with a move like b5. And after the move e4, white occupies the center with his 3 pawns. But it's black who is going to challenge it with the move b5 here. It's a pawn sacrifice, c takes b5. And after bishop to g7, white captures the pawn on a6. And now interesting moment, because here the position, the play, it more looks like a Benko gambit. When black normally is going to recapture with the bishop, castle king side, and try to shift the attention to the queen side. So there are open files, and you're able to generate quite some nice piece play on that side of the board. But here, interestingly enough, black doesn't capture immediately on a6 because he wants to wait white to spend the tempo with a move like bishop e2 or maybe even bishop d3, and only then you want to take on a6. So white is going to waste time with the bishop. But therefore, castling king side is played. And now look at this. Here, things are getting incredibly sharp as white has different options, but play the move h5, opening up the h-file for the rook. Black is accepting the challenge here with knight takes pawn, not minding that the h-file is open. And after this move, g4, attacking the knight on h5. The knight got to go back to f6. It's attacking the pawn, but the pawn goes even further to g5, hitting the knight on f6. The knight goes back to h5. And here it is bishop e2, as white is about to take on h5 and to regain the pawn. But after bishop takes a6, bishop takes h5, g takes h5, you're not going to take with the rook. If this is possible and you get in the move e5 to open up the diagonal for the queen, then it can be checkmate very quickly. But the reason why I didn't play rook takes h5 is because of knight e5. When that pawn break is no longer available, this knight is beautifully placed in the center with ideas to come to d3, as it can count on the support of the bishop. So black is in good shape there. But now, look at what Fedoseev is doing, guys. This is incredible. He is violating all the main principles of opening play by pushing another pawn. I mean, not all the rules are violated. He's occupying the center, but his king is still in the center as well. And the other pieces are not fully developed. And the big question is, what is white going to do very soon with its own king? Is it safe? You're never going to castle. It's not even allowed with his bishop on a6 preventing that. You also don't want to stay in the center while castling queenside seems like you're just walking into the fire line as the bishop is looking at the queen side, the queen, and the rooks there are ready to attack there as well. So I think there are some serious issues. Here, black opens up the center. That's what you want to do when white is trying to build up an attack. But, well, it's not so easy. White played here the move knight ge2. So you're supporting your knight on c3, and you're also planning to bring the knight to g3, followed by knight takes h5. And here the queen comes to e8, so the queen is ready to strike on the e-file. But there are also ideas, for instance, if you go knight g3, to play here the move f5. So the queen is helping out. You're not really defending the pawn. You could take on h5, but then the bishop comes into d4. It's incredibly sharp position, but looks like black is absolutely okay. When the pawns on e4 and d5 are going to be exchanged, black is okay. But let's get back. After queen e8, white decided here to take on e6. Now the pawn recaptures. So the queen is once again in touch with the pawn on h5, but also I don't think white's attack is going to be too dangerous because the 7th rank is open, which means that the queen and the rook are always able to help out there. But now, knight g3. And this is the turning point in the game, because if black is going to play in a slow way, you can imagine that the knight comes in, the queen comes over there. White's attack does look pretty strong. At some point, you may face some problems defending your pawn on h7. But the next move by Salem is an absolute shocker. He puts the knight on e5. And you didn't see that move coming at all because the square has been covered by the pawn. But the knight is ready to give a check on d3 or to come anywhere. It's just landing there and you cannot ignore it. White captured the pawn on e5. Bishop takes e5. And what is black's compensation about here? Well, you do attack the knight on g3. The knight is unprotected. And you could even take the pawn on h5, which was not played by Fedoseev. But you may pause the video here, and this is a tactical exercise. Can you find the refutation of this move? Because there is a beautiful idea to deliver checkmate by force. And it is initiated here with queen takes knight, deflecting the rook from the back rank. Because if you take the queen, it's rook f1 check. The king gotta go to d2, and then it's bishop f4 with checkmate. Look at these bishops together with the rook. It's a beautiful mating pattern. So therefore, white cannot take on h5. Decided here instead to put the queen on g2. So the queen is coming over, defending the knight. And after rook b8, black is activating its rook on the half-open file. White captures with the knight on h5. And you see that the queen is also eyeing the king on g8. So knight to f6 is a big threat here. Because if you gotta take with the bishop, then the g file will be opened. And it can be checkmate on g7. So queen g6 is a good move. Now, knight f6 doesn't make sense. It's just a check. You can whip off that knight. And white is unable to recapture as the queen on g2 is hanging. So queen g6 is a good defensive move. Black is a piece down. But bishop e3. White needs to continue developing its pieces. What should be done here? Well, black is almost fully mobilized, but is now trying to open up the position with the moves d5. Excellent idea. So in general, you would rather give up these pawns. When these pawns are no longer there, it's easier for your rooks to target the white king. And for instance, if white is careless and captures the pawn on d5, then there is a forcing sequence of moves. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes back, rook b1 check, as here, the queen is supporting now the rook on b1. White is missing the pawn on e4. Black is winning by force. It was not played in the game, but let me show you. Rook takes rook, queen takes, king d2, queen b2 check, and on the next move you do take the queen. That is winning for black. So instead of taking the pawn, white brings its king into safety, castling queenside. But now black can push the pawn to d4 with a double attack against these two minor pieces. And what to play here? Not an easy question at all. Probably something like queen h3 is really strong, with the idea of preparing knight f6 and the rook coming over to g1, so that if the g file will be opened after taking on f6, gf6, well, the queen is in deep trouble. But white slightly deviated from that plan by starting with the move rook d to g1. And here another big moment in the game. Because you can either take on c3 or take the bishop. If you take the bishop, you're saying that, okay, white is missing its most important attacker. And probably you're able to hold on here. It's still super complicated, but after pawn takes c3, black is not interested in holding the position. He wants to take on b2, give a check, and try to promote a pawn, and even the bishop can come in. So this is incredibly dangerous. White cannot allow black capturing on b2. Played here b3, but now the bishop comes into d3. That is a good move, because the bishop, well, it's threatening to take on e4 with an attack against the queen and the rook. But here, white is missing a big opportunity. He could have just given a check on f6. So if you ignore the knight, then it's rook takes h7, and that is just a crushing attack for white. So black would be forced to take on f6. Was not played in the game, this move, knight f6, but it's very important to understand what's going on here, because here white, okay, the queens are coming off the board. Queen takes g2, rook takes g2, check, and after king f7 you play e5, and white's pawn on f6 is really annoying. There are ideas like rook g7, or even if you defend against it, maybe the rook can come to d1. And white is having a great time here, maybe even a technically winning position. But instead, Fedoseev played this move, queen h3. He's first moving the queen away, so he wants to move the knight to f6 with a more devastating effect. Because if the knight can come to f6, and you do take back with your g-pawn, the rook is hitting the queen immediately. Thanks to a skewer, you're winning a lot of material. But the big moment in the game, I mean, we have already seen some incredible ideas by both sides. But now, the next move is a huge shock. It is coming out of the blue. And, well, I don't think you can see it here yet. But if you can do so, pause the video, give yourself a challenge here. Black is ignoring the threats and comes up with a huge sacrifice. Sacrifice number 2, rook takes b3. Fantastic idea. Threatening checkmate in 1. So a check on f6 is not really going to help. You eliminate a knight and it's going to be mate on b1. So here, pawn takes b3 and the rook comes to a8. The a file has been opened and you're threatening checkmate because pawn on c3 is taking away the b2 and the d2 square, and the bishop covers the c2 square. So the king is boxed in now. Cannot really do anything. So if you take a pawn, you just give mate on a1, as I said. So what can be done instead? Well, big moment here in the game. Once again, king d1 is played. You're trying to escape with your king, but then it's queen takes h5, eliminating that knight. And why do you play this move? What is the purpose? It's not obvious yet, but it's a check, and the queen has to take it, of course, otherwise you're just losing even more. Now the rook is coming into a1 with check. So the idea of the white's move king d1 is that the bishop can come back to c1 and everything seems to be under control. But now, after the queen sacrifice, there is another rook sacrifice. Rook takes, bishop, white resigned. But why? King takes, there's bishop to f4. And here we see that White's pieces are no longer able to help in defense. The bishop is giving a check. And before the sacrifice, there was this knight on h5, which was covering the f4 square. That explains the queen sack by Salem. Beautiful idea. It is check. The king got to go to d1. But there's c2, and both bishops are supporting the march of the passed pawn. King e1, c1, queen. And if you go back with the queen to d1, well, there is queen e3 check. You gotta block with your queen and then it's checkmate. That doesn't work. If the king instead tries to escape to f2, there is queen e3, king g2, queen g3 with checkmate. What an amazing game. 4 sacrifices, and not just pawn sacrifices, guys. 4 piece sacrifices in just one game is something very unusual at the very top. But especially in such a way to crush a 2700 player with 4 piece sacrifices in only 30 moves. That is just simply amazing. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of this game? Let me just show you, by the way, one final line, what white should have done instead of king d1. There is this possibility to play knight f6 here first. It's a check, so you may take over the initiative yourself. But after bishop takes f6, queen takes e6, well, you're ready to block with your queen. Everything is under control. There's no time to take the bishop here because of checkmate still. And if you do take with the pawn, look at this. Well, there is king to h8. And still the queen can't be taken because of mate on a1. It's still the same mating pattern, which is in the air. The best move here for white is to play queen c8, to deflect the rook from the a file. So you got to take on c8, and then there is rook g7, which is a cool idea because you're going to regain the queen. You're taking the queen. If queen takes on b3, for instance, it's actually white who's giving checkmate. So therefore, black better gives up the queen himself. And after pawn takes, you may take the pawn on g7 yet, but maybe it's even better to hide to avoid any unpleasant checks. And these two pawns, they are incredibly strong. I mean, the pawn on c3 and the bishop, but the bishop also feels like a pawn because it's controlling the c2 square. You're ready to take on e4. You're ready to go rook a8. There is still a massive mating attack in the pipeline. So this is what white should have done at the end. Instead, there was this move king d1, and we have seen already this spectacular idea with queen takes knight. Absolutely amazing. One of my favorite games, maybe favorite game of the year. Let me know in the comments. What do you think of this game? Subscribe to the channel and support it as much as you can. Thanks for doing that. And stay tuned for more action on the channel. Bye bye.